What is up, my fellow andronauts? I'm going to show you 9 reasons why finasteride actually causes PFS. Most people think that it's because it lowers DHT, but I'm going to show you 9 other reasons why it actually causes PFS, which is the long-term condition after you stop using finasteride. By the way, if you would like to solve your finasteride quickly, I have a course on fixing PFS. Link is in the description below. Let's dive into this video. The number one reason is because finasteride induces gut inflammation, specifically upon withdrawal, right? So it does induce some inflammation while you're using it, or at least alters the microbiome. But then once you stop, this is when it really starts to cause issues. And you know that the gut is called the second brain. And a lot of people speculate that the way we think is not even the way we think, but it's being controlled by our gut. This is why you have a gut feeling, or why the gut is involved in depression, anxiety, all kinds of mood disorders. So if your gut is healthy, your mind is healthy as well. And so there's a bunch of neurotransmitters and hormones in the gut. And so when you have dysregulation, you also have dysregulation of those hormones and neurotransmitters. And it can also induce neuroinflammation. And you do not want neuroinflammation to be optimal. So just look at this graph, right? Here you can see a variety of inflammatory markers before, while using finasteride, and then after stopping finasteride. And this is some of the markers of leaky gut. So the markers that really jumped up was this interleukin 1b. So here it was like, while using finasteride, there wasn't really much of a difference between the finasteride group, which is the white column, and the black column, which is the non-finasteride group. So while using finasteride, this marker didn't really change. Upon stopping, it skyrocketed. The same thing with tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6, like a massive increase in these 3 markers of inflammation. So finasteride upon withdrawal induces inflammation, but that does not mean that you should stay on finasteride not to induce inflammation, because over time it can also worsen intestinal health like most drugs can. And then in terms of leaky gut markers, you can see this CLD1 marker went up. So these guys not only had the increase in inflammatory marker and also dysbiosis being created by finasteride, but also more leaky gut, which means that those toxins now being created by the harmful bacteria in the gut can now translocate into the body, where it can create a lot of inflammation elsewhere, such as the nervous system, the penis, and wherever you do not want those toxins to act on. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is hypermethylation of 5-alpha reductase. This study found that the 5-alpha reductase 2 promoter region in the cerebral spinal fluid was more frequently methylated in the PFS patients compared to control. 56% versus 70%, and no promoter methylation was detected in blood samples. And so this is very oftentimes why, when you only look at blood testosterone and DHT, you will see there's no difference between testosterone and DHT between people that use finasteride and didn't use finasteride. But when you look at the cerebral spinal fluid, then you will see there's actually a drop in DHT, right? And I'll show you more on that in just a second. But what this methylation means is that it adds methyl groups to an enzyme, which suppresses the action of that enzyme, right? So the more it's methylated, the more it is suppressed. And inflammation and aging and obesity and so on upregulates the methylation of 5-alpha reductase. So actually, this is why men, as they get older, have less and less and less DHT, because their 5-alpha reductase becomes hypermethylated. So they end up with less 5-alpha reductase, less DHT, and they become less responsive to finasteride. The enzyme DNA methyltransferase is the main enzyme that adds these methyl groups to 5-alpha reductase. It's responsible for hypermethylation. And so when you actually delete this enzyme, or its pharmacological inhibition had antidepressant-like properties. Also inhibiting DNMT can methylate 5-alpha reductase and enhance DHT production. I show you exactly how to do this. And there's a previous video that I did about why your DHT is actually low. In that video, I discuss some of the things that can help to unmethylate your DHT, but I discuss all of these things in my PFAS course. So if you can inhibit DNMT, you can help to unmethylate 5-alpha reductase and boost your DHT. Number 3 is the low cerebrospinal fluid hormones. So it's basically this light blue line, surrounding the brain. So it's like the fluid surrounding the brain. And so this is a better marker of hormones in the brain compared to the blood, right? So if you test the blood, you can't really see what's happening in the tissue like the prostate or the penis or in the brain. And so measuring the cerebrospinal fluid, you get a better idea of brain hormones. So it's just a better marker. It's not 100% accurate because it's not like because every specific different part of the brain will also have different concentrations of a specific hormone and neurotransmitter. And so the cerebral spinal fluid is just a better marker for these hormones than the serum. So there's 3 studies I want to show you guys. The first study found that decreased levels of tetrahydroprogesterone, also known as allopregnanolone, isopregnanolone, and DHT in the cerebral spinal fluid. In the plasma, dihydroprogesterone was reduced, and 3-alpha-diol and 17-beta estradiol were elevated. So the CSF hormones, the 5-alpha ones, were reduced in the first study. The second study, they also found decreased levels of pregnenolone, progesterone, dihydroprogesterone, DHT, and estradiol, and increased levels of DHA, testosterone, and 3-alpha-diol in the cerebral spinal fluid. So again, lower levels of 5-alpha reduced steroids like DHT and allopregnanolone. Now this is the third study. This was the most interesting that I could find. And this was the serum levels of 2 groups. The group A used alpha blockers. Group B used alpha blockers and dutasteride. And you can see that total testosterone in the serum was highest and estradiol was highest in the dutasteride group. But when you look at the cerebral spinal fluid, testosterone was tanked, very interestingly, and DHT was also very low, and then estradiol was very high. So the moment you have very low testosterone, low DHT, high estradiol, this is for sure going to lead to mental disorders and sexual dysfunction, right? So if you just look at the blood, oh, my testosterone is fine, dutasteride is not doing anything funky to me. Then look at the cerebral spinal fluid, which most people can't do. Horrible levels of testosterone and DHT, and then you wonder like why you get these kind of side effects, right? It blows my mind how some people do not get side effects from dutasteride or finasteride, since it really tanks hormones like this. Number 4 is high serotonin and low dopamine. So finasteride has been shown to increase serotonin and lower dopamine by negatively impacting the microbiome. This column was while on finasteride, and this was after using finasteride. So even while on finasteride, dopamine took a little bit of a hit, but after stopping finasteride, dopamine took more of a hit. Serotonin remained more or less the same on finasteride, but then it really increased after stopping finasteride. So serotonin in excess lowers libido and can contribute to erectile dysfunction, whereas dopamine is the opposite. Dopamine and norepinephrine boost libido, erections, and penile sensitivity. And then also dopamine agonists only work properly when 5-alpha reduced steroids are optimized, or they actually work better optimally. So finasteride interferes with this process. It interferes with the dopamine D1 signaling and downregulates the dopamine receptor D3. So it has multiple anti-dopaminergic effects, which is why people actually report when they use finasteride or come off of finasteride, where they don't feel like really that buzz anymore when they do things. They don't feel that excitation, that arousal, because finasteride messes with the dopamine signaling. Vascular damage. Finasteride has been shown to cause vascular damage and contribute to ED. This is in humans. So according to the study, up to 68% of the users experience vascular abnormalities when measured by the penile duplex Doppler ultrasound. Vascular damage. And so when you can't maintain the blood in the penis, you can't maintain an erection. Also, excess estrogen contributes to penile vascular abnormalities, and has been shown that 5-alpha reductase inhibitors upregulate aromatase expression and estrogen receptor alpha expression in various tissues such as the prostate and the penis. So when you inhibit 5-alpha reductase, you end up with lower levels of DHT, higher levels of estrogen and cortisol, both of which are destructive to the penis. So this could definitely contribute to some of the vascular and structural changes you will get to the penis. Finasteride also lowers vascular endothelial growth factor. So that vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, is responsible for the growth of new veins and arteries and vasculature in the penis. So the penis is extremely vascular dense. And so when you get a loss or destruction of those veins, you need to repair them. So when that VEGF is inhibited, you won't get that same growth or repair that's happening. And also, finasteride has been shown to inhibit nitric oxide synthesis in the penis by lowering DHT. So DHT very powerfully stimulates nitric oxide synthesis. Number 6 is penile structural changes. So finasteride has been shown to cause structural changes in the penis, namely penile fibrosis. And this can lead to obviously penile shrinkage, and collagenous tissue isn't very stretchable. So the penis consists mostly of spongy, smooth muscle tissue called the corpus cavernosum. Testosterone and DHT optimizes this smooth muscle tissue, and low DHT can lead to loss of this tissue. When there is an excess amount of oxidative stress in the penis due to gut inflammation or excess cortisol or estrogen, then this smooth muscle is replaced by fibrotic tissue. And fibrotic tissue isn't stretchable, so excess fibrosis contributes to penile shrinkage, hard flaccid, and ED. Now you can reverse this by maximizing your DHT, or at least applying DHT topically to the penis, because you need to create new smooth muscle cells from the stem cells in the penis. Number 7 is the insufficient deactivation of cortisol. So 5-alpha reductase not only creates DHT and dihydroprogesterone, but also deactivates cortisol. Inhibiting 5-alpha reductase will increase the total active cortisol pool. This can make someone more catabolic. Some men using or having PFS have reported muscle and bone loss, which coincides with suboptimal androgen to cortisol ratio. So you can see that you have this interconversion between cortisone, which is the non-active version of cortisol, and cortisol, which is obviously the active hormone, with these 11-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase enzymes. Then you have 5-alpha reductase and 5-beta reductase. That's deactivating cortisol into allo-tetrahydrocortisol. And you also have 5-beta that's deactivating the cortisone. So when you don't have enough 5-alpha and 5-beta, you have an accumulation of cortisol, at least this whole cortisol and cortisone pool. Androgens block the effect, or at least protective against the effects of cortisol. Now you shrink DHT, so you already have less protective compounds against your cortisol, even if the pool didn't increase. So insufficient deactivation of cortisol is point number 7. Number 8 is thyroid abnormalities. So finasteride has been shown to increase this deiodinase type 3. And so it converts T4 into reverse T3 and also T3 into T2. Now T2 is inactive, it's very weak. You need to take about 10 or so times more T2 to get more or less the same effect as T3. And also reverse T3 is a direct competitor to T3 at the receptor. The more reverse T3 you have, the more there is competition with T3 at the receptor. So if you just shrink reverse T3 without increasing total T3, you will have better T3 signaling because there's less competition. So it's all about that ratio. And so finasteride increases this. So a lot of people might just look at TSH or T4, maybe T3. It's like, oh, everything's fine. I'm hunky-dory. But you never look at reverse T3 to see like what that ratio is. And that can lead to hypothyroid symptoms. So cold hands and feet and elevated cholesterol, LDL, triglycerides, blood sugar, estrogen, and prolactin are common complaints of people with PFS, all of which are signs of hypothyroidism. This increase in reverse T3 or deactivation of T3 might be the reason why that is happening. Number 9 is the inhibition of PNMT. So this PNMT converts norepinephrine into epinephrine. So the whole pathway works like this. You have tyrosine converted into L-DOPA that creates dopamine. And then you have dopamine beta hydroxylase that converts dopamine into norepinephrine. And so norepinephrine is then converted into epinephrine. So these are catecholamines. And you might know that norepinephrine and epinephrine is like the sympathetic nervous system, fight and flight, increases heart rate, vasoconstriction, like those kind of stuff. Right, so this PNMT is stimulated by cortisol. It uses SAMe as a cofactor for the conversion. So if you're under-methylating, you will not be converting enough norepinephrine to epinephrine. If you're over-methylating, you will be converting a lot of norepinephrine into epinephrine. And so epinephrine increases heart rate, vasoconstrictions, causes sweaty hands and feet, those kind of stuff. And so messing with this PNMT enzyme in small amounts might have anti-anxiety effects, but in large amounts it can contribute to erectile dysfunction and this loss of sensitivity that people with PFS suffer from. So the catecholamine functions. We have norepinephrine causes in excess, erectile dysfunction, poor sensitivity or at least high pain tolerance, and it causes ejaculation. So people with excess amount of norepinephrine typically suffer from premature ejaculation, but also erectile dysfunction. Adrenaline, on the other hand, is involved in erection, so it might help with erections, and it also enhances sensitivity or lowers pain tolerance. So lowering catecholamines in general will lower libido and sexual drive and reduce penile sensitivity. So I think one of the main reasons why people with PFS actually have reduced sensitivity is because they have low adrenaline, but also because they have desensitized levels of the alpha-2 adrenergic receptor, which noradrenaline binds to. So if you have high levels of noradrenaline that's constantly acting on this receptor, you then get a desensitization. And so when you stop finasteride, now you have like normal conversion, so norepinephrine drops, but you still have like this desensitization of this receptor. And the faster this receptor comes back to normal, the faster you will regain your sensitivity. And the faster norepinephrine can start to convert to adrenaline, the faster you will resume normal erections. So you need this optimal balance between norepinephrine and epinephrine for optimal sensitivity, erections, and all of the good stuff. So this was quite interesting because high PNMT is found in people who suffer from priapism. So this is typical in people with leukemia or with sickle cell disease. They have elevated levels of this PNMT, they have excess amount of epinephrine. And when you have excess amount of epinephrine, this is when people start to suffer from something called stuttering priapism and so on. And then they are actually treated with finasteride, not because finasteride just lowers DHT, but because it actually inhibits PNMT. But I don't think anyone in the science actually realized that. So there you go. There are 9 reasons why finasteride actually causes PFS aside from just inhibiting 5-alpha reductase and DHT. But keep in mind, again, everyone is different to the sensitivity to finasteride. Some people might get side effects after one dose. Other people might start to get side effects after 20 years. It depends on the person, right? Someone can be smoking for 50 years and never get lung cancer. Someone might be smoking 1 cigarette and start to get lung cancer, right? So everyone is different and how sensitive they are to this specific drug, which has a lot of side effects. And just as a reminder, if you would like to fix your PFS or sexual function, maximize your DHT, I have a course on PFS. Link is in the description below, so grab that if you want to solve your problems quickly. All right, guys, I hope you learned something new, and I will check you in the next one. Cheers, guys.